The job I lost and the life I found. I never thought I'd be thankful for getting fired. But standing here on the porch of my lakeside cabin in northern Michigan, watching the sun set over the water while my coffee steams in the crisp autumn air, I realize it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My name is Marcus Wright. 3 years ago, I was a senior marketing executive at Pinnacle Global, one of the largest tech companies in Seattle. I had the corner office, the sleek apartment downtown, and a relationship that looked perfect on Instagram. My fiancée, Elise, was beautiful, ambitious, and as committed to climbing the corporate ladder as I was. We were the power couple everyone envied. At least, that's what I thought. The first signs of trouble appeared when I started getting passed over for promotions. Despite consistently exceeding my targets and bringing in major clients, I watched as colleagues with less experience and fewer results moved ahead of me. "It's just office politics," Elise would say dismissively when I voiced my frustrations. "You need to network more, play the game better." But I noticed she was spending more and more time with my boss, Richard Parker. Always volunteering for projects on his team, always laughing a little too loudly at his jokes at company functions. I tried to ignore it. Tried to focus on work, on proving myself. I started arriving earlier, staying later, bringing work home on weekends. Elise grew increasingly distant, criticizing my obsession with work while simultaneously pushing me to earn more, achieve more. Then came the Westridge account. It was massive, potentially the biggest client in the company's history. I worked on that pitch for months, meticulously researching their market, crafting a revolutionary campaign strategy. When I presented it to the executive team, even Richard looked impressed. 2 weeks later, I was called into the CEO's office. My heart was pounding with anticipation. This was it, my moment, my redemption. Instead, I was handed a termination letter. "We're restructuring the department," the CEO explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "Your position has been eliminated." I was numb as I packed up my office, as security escorted me out of the building I'd entered with such pride every day for 7 years. The shock hadn't even worn off when I got home early to find Elise there, with Richard. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "It's not what you think," Elise started, but her eyes said otherwise. "Actually, Marcus," Richard interjected, straightening his tie, "I think you should know that Elise and I have been seeing each other for some time. She's been instrumental in refining your Westridge pitch. The one the company will be moving forward with, under my leadership." I just stood there, keys still in my hand, watching as my career and relationship imploded simultaneously. "I'm sorry," Elise said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. "But we want different things. Richard can offer me the life I deserve." That night, I stayed in a hotel. The next morning, I returned to find most of Elise's things gone, and a note saying she'd be back for the rest with movers. The apartment we'd chosen together, that I'd been paying most of the rent for, suddenly felt like a museum of betrayal. I spent the next week in a haze, barely eating, barely sleeping. Friends, mostly work friends, stopped calling. It was as if I'd contracted some contagious disease of failure. My LinkedIn profile became a digital ghost town. Then, on day 8 of my unemployment, I received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Marcus Wright?" The voice was gruff, unfamiliar. "Yes," I replied, expecting another collection agency. My savings were dwindling fast. "This is Jack Holloway, your grandfather's attorney." My grandfather? I hadn't seen him in years. He'd been a distant figure in my life, a rugged, self-made man who never understood my corporate ambitions. He'd built a successful construction company from nothing, then retired early to a cabin in northern Michigan. My parents had always been dismissive of his simple lifestyle. I'm sorry to inform you that Stanley Wright passed away last month. I felt a pang of guilt. I hadn't even known he was sick. He left you something in his will. His cabin and property on Lake Superior. And a letter. A week later, I drove up to Michigan, partly out of obligation, partly because I had nowhere else to go. The cabin was at the end of a long, winding road through dense pine forest. It was October, and the trees were ablaze with color. As I pulled up to the rustic log structure, something unexpected stirred in me. A memory of summer visits as a child, before I'd become too busy for family trips. The cabin was simple but solid: 2 bedrooms, a large living area with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with views of the lake. It was dusty from disuse, but otherwise in good condition. My grandfather had always been meticulous about maintenance. The letter was on the kitchen table, along with a set of keys and a folder of documents. Marcus, if you're reading this, I've finally kicked the bucket. Don't waste time feeling bad about not visiting. I never was one for sentimentality. I'm leaving you the cabin and the land, 50 acres including 500 feet of lake frontage. It's paid for. No mortgage, no debt. The property taxes are covered by a trust once set up for the next 5 years. There's also $50,000 in a local bank account to help you get started. Get started on what, you might ask? Living, son. Actually living. I've watched you from a distance, climbing that corporate ladder. Chasing money and status like they're going to fill something inside you. They won't. Trust me, I tried that route too, before I figured out what matters. This place saved me when I was at my lowest. Maybe it can do the same for you. In the shed out back, you'll find my tools. They're yours now. So is the half-finished boat. I never got around to completing it. Maybe you will. Take care of yourself, Marcus. And remember, a man who builds his life with his own 2 hands sleeps better than one who pays others to build it for him. Your grandfather, Stanley. I sat at the table for a long time, reading and rereading the letter. Then I walked out to the shed. It was larger than I expected, more of a workshop really. Neat rows of tools hung on the walls. In the center stood the skeleton of a wooden boat, a small sailboat, by the looks of it. Beside it was a workbench with plans and sketches, all in my grandfather's careful hand. I ran my fingers along the smooth wooden ribs of the boat. I knew nothing about boat building. Nothing about carpentry at all. My hands were soft from years of typing on keyboards, not working with tools. But I had nothing but time. That night, I built a fire in the fireplace and sat looking out at the lake. For the first time since losing my job, I felt something like peace. The constant pressure to perform, to impress, to climb higher, it was gone. In its place was possibility. The next morning, I walked into town, a small community of year-round residents and summer tourists. At the general store, I struck up a conversation with the owner, a woman named Sarah who'd known my grandfather. Stanley was a good man, she said, helping me gather supplies. Kept to himself mostly, but always willing to lend a hand when needed. I didn't know him well, I admitted. I was too busy with my career in Seattle. She nodded without judgment. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a rhythm. Mornings were spent cleaning and repairing the cabin, afternoons in the workshop, trying to make sense of my grandfather's boat plans. I was terrible at first, breaking boards, measuring wrong, cursing my lack of skill. But slowly, I began to improve. The physical labor was therapeutic. For the first time in years, I slept deeply, exhausted in a good way. I stopped checking my phone constantly. The cabin had spotty cell service anyway, and I found I didn't miss the constant connectivity. As winter approached, I wondered if I should return to Seattle, start job hunting again. But the thought of going back to that world, the politics, the backstabbing, the constant pressure, made me physically ill. Instead, I winterized the cabin and stayed. Sarah introduced me to other locals: Jake, who ran the marina; Maria, who taught at the small school; Tom, a retired carpenter who, upon hearing about my boat project, offered to teach me. "Your grandfather started coming to my workshop sessions," Tom told me one day as we worked on the boat. "He was a natural with wood. Said it helped him think." Under Tom's guidance, the boat began to take shape. So did a new version of myself. By spring, I had built relationships in the community that felt more genuine than any I'd had in Seattle. I helped Jake repair docks before the tourist season. I volunteered at the school, teaching a marketing workshop that Maria had requested. One weekend, a group of local business owners asked if I'd look over their websites and social media. "We heard you used to do this professionally," Sarah explained. I agreed, expecting to give a few quick tips. Instead, I found myself getting excited about their businesses, the unique value they offered, the stories they weren't telling. I stayed up late drafting proposals, creating content calendars, designing simple logos. When I presented my ideas, they were thrilled. "What would you charge to implement these?" Jake asked. I hadn't considered it. "I could do it for trade," I suggested. "Boat supplies, food, help with cabin repairs." And just like that, I had clients. Not corporate giants with massive budgets, but small businesses run by people I respected. I worked on their marketing during rainy days and continued building my boat when the weather was good. Summer brought tourists, and with them, more opportunities. I built a simple website offering my services and found myself with a steady stream of projects. I set up a small office in the cabin's second bedroom, but I made sure to limit my screen time. No more 60-hour weeks. No more sacrificing my life for work. As my first year at the cabin came to a close, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the fleeting happiness that comes from a promotion or a luxury purchase, but a deep, abiding contentment. I had enough money to live comfortably, thanks to my growing local client base. I had meaningful work that helped real people. I had friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. And I had purpose, building something with my own hands, continuing my grandfather's legacy. The boat was nearly complete. Tom had helped me install the mast and rigging, and we were finishing the final details. We planned to launch it on the anniversary of my arrival. A week before the launch, I received an email from Richard Parker. "Marcus, I hope this finds you well. The Westridge campaign has been a tremendous success, and the client has requested an expansion of the project. I'm reaching out because, despite our past differences, I believe you have the skills we need for this next phase. Pinnacle Global is prepared to offer you a position as Senior Director of Client Relations, with a substantial salary increase and stock options. Westridge specifically requested your involvement. I understand there may be some awkwardness given the personal situation with Elise, but I assure you we can maintain professional boundaries. You may have heard that our relationship ended several months ago. Turns out we wanted different things. Please consider this opportunity to rejoin the Pinnacle team. Seattle misses you. Regards, Richard Parker, VP of Marketing." 3 years ago, this email would have felt like vindication. Now, it just made me laugh. I took my laptop down to the lake and sat on the dock, watching the sunset as I composed my reply. "Richard, thank you for your offer. I'm flattered that Westridge recognized my work, even if Pinnacle didn't at the time. However, I must decline. I've built something here that no corporate position could replace. A life of my own design, work that matters to me, and relationships based on mutual respect rather than utility. I wish you and Pinnacle continued success with Westridge and all your endeavors. Best regards, Marcus Wright, owner, North Shore Creative. I hit send, then closed my laptop and set it aside. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in shades of gold and pink. In the distance, I could see a few boats heading in for the evening. Soon my boat would be among them. I'd named it Second Chance, painted in my grandfather's favorite blue on the stern. As I sat there, I heard footsteps on the dock behind me. It was Sarah, carrying a basket. "Thought you might like some company," she said, sitting beside me. "And I made too much dinner." We'd been spending more time together lately. What had started as friendship was slowly evolving into something more, something genuine and unhurried. "I just turned down a job offer," I told her, accepting the basket. "In Seattle. High-paying, prestigious title. And how do you feel about that?" she asked, her eyes on the sunset. I considered the question seriously. "Grateful," I finally said. "Grateful that I know enough now to recognize what actually matters to me." She smiled, understanding. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Tomorrow, I would launch my boat. Next week, I would start designing a website for a new ecotourism business in town. In the winter, Tom had offered to teach me furniture making. My life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of doubt, days when I wondered if I'd made the right choice. But those moments were becoming rarer. The job I lost had led me to the life I found. And sitting there on the dock, with the gentle lap of waves against the shore and the first stars appearing overhead, I knew I wouldn't trade this peace for all the corner offices in the world. The end.